Something that I find really, really interesting about life is the idea that you could work 3 jobs and still not be able to pay your bills. You could train so hard to be on that team, to be on the starting 11, and still not get picked. You could study hard for your exam and still not get the grade that you expected. You could love as hard as you want to, do all the right things that you think are going to get you where you want to be with the person that you think you want to be with, and still not end up there. Upon reflection, upon thinking about this, why does this happen? Welcome to what keeps me up at night. I realized that something that we've been taught most of our lives from primary school, from the time that we're young, is the idea that X equals to Y. The idea that if you only you can try X amount of times, you can get Y amount of results. And for the most part, this is right, but there are also so many factors in the background that contribute to this relationship. We're taught if only you can put in X amount of effort, you can get Y amount of results. And this kind of looks like this on a graph. On the x-axis, we've got the effort. On the y-axis, we've got success. And what we're usually taught is that that's what the graph looks like. The more effort you put into something, the more successful you're going to end up being. And I remember in primary school, we would have exams and everyone would be placed in chronological order according to the score that you had on these exams. It would always be someone at the top, someone at the bottom. I usually always ended up being in the middle of the class. And this was called passing. It was called passing. And kids would say, "I pass number one, I pass number whatever." And I was reflecting on this recently and realized that some of the kids that were at the top of the class, or some of the kids that were at the bottom of the class, today there's no difference. There's no statistical difference between that, which means that there were other factors in life that led to wherever people were, and this relationship is not always right. I was doing more reading as well, and I found myself in the book of Ecclesiastes, which has been written by one of the wisest kings to ever live, King Solomon, rest in peace. And in Ecclesiastes, he writes something very profound. He says, Ecclesiastes 9 verse 11, by the way, it says, "I've observed something else under the sun. The fastest runner doesn't always win the race, and the strongest warrior doesn't always win the battle. The wise sometimes go hungry, and the skillful are not necessarily worthy, and those who are educated don't always lead successful lives. It is all decided by chance, by being in the right place at the right time." I just found this really, really interesting. Like the fastest runner doesn't always win the race. Yet what we're taught in life is that if you can only train hard, if you can be only as fast, then you're going to win every race. But even Usain Bolt did not win all the races in his life. The strongest warrior doesn't always win the battle. We think if only I can be strong enough, then I can face this battle. But the wise sometimes go hungry. The skillful. And this is not to be pessimistic or to be demoralizing, by the way. John C. Maxwell, one of my mentors, I follow him, I've followed him for a long time, said something profound. He said that when he was coming up in his journey, he would always tell people to work hard. He would always say to them, work hard. Whenever someone asked him, how do I become successful like you? He would say to them, you only need to work hard. And then one day he went to a developing country and he realized that people in the developing country were poorer than he was, yet they worked hard. Most of them were waking up early in the morning, yet they were still poor. And then he realized, whoa, that means then that success is not always about hard work. There's other factors in play. The author of the book Psychology of Money, I can't remember his name, I think it's Jose, his last name, Jose, I can't remember. He does say something profound as well. He says there's so many psychological reasons that determine or contribute to the way that someone's relationship with money plays out, i.e., I could do everything in my life that Steve Jobs did, yet I still won't end up where Steve Jobs ended. Like the town that he lived in, the framework that was around, the context he grew up in, all this, so many things around him, right, were different. That I might get close to him, but I won't live out a life like Steve Jobs did. And that is not to be pessimistic or to discourage you, but that is to remind you and bring you back to a central theme of effect and cause. I spoke about this in one of my previous videos as well. If you want to, so what we can do with this information is to remind ourselves that the success we're after is actually an effect. And we can get that effect through so many reasons. Of course, one of those reasons is going to be your hard work. You're going to have to work hard to get what you want. That is, of course, it is a universal truth. We all know it. We've been taught that since the time we were kids. But then there's so many other factors as well. One of them is the time and the place. You need to be in the right place and in the right time. You need to also know the right people. Connections is a big thing. Something else is time and chance. So what is the summary? What am I trying to say? What I'm trying to say to you is that you need to be prepared. Again, in one of my videos as well, I spoke about the idea of the marathon, of how, rest in peace, Nipsey Hussle, life is a marathon. You continue on the journey. So you need to literally continue preparing. Luck is when opportunity meets preparation. So the more prepared you are, the more, we don't train for war during the time of war. We train for war before the time of war, is when you sharpen your weapons and get ready. So I'm not giving this message to disarm you or to be pessimistic, but to remind you that there's so many reasons. Be easy on yourself, bro. There's so many reasons for success. It's not just one thing. That friend of yours that you think he should be in the place that he's in, well, so many factors in his life that are different. Maybe he had an aunt that had a connection. Maybe he knew someone. Maybe he was in the right place at the right time and met the right people, and then they helped him out. You could be in a similar position as well. That's best for you if you keep working. I almost feel like saying working hard, but if you keep being consistent and being on that marathon. It's your boy, your friend, Nez Zimba, and I will see you in the next video. Please comment down below what this experience means to you, what the lesson of X equals to Y has been to you, and what the trajectory of success being linear has been like to you. Is this just me? Maybe this is just me and everyone else is perfect and you're all successful and I'm the only one that's realizing that there's so many other reasons that are going to contribute to me finding the things that I want. I will see you in the next video. Boom.